It's more trams.
Uy, Maring Sining, ikaw man day na mo eh.
Ako na sa ni Marie.
Uy,
Ang inabuhian ko dari, nanindagan ko kuan dari.
Di ba classmate man ang atong mga anak sa grade 3?
Classmate.
Nakakita ka silang bago maestra.
So, kita ka naman.
Toy. Tindot yung mo tudlo eh. Epektibo mo tudlo. Di pareha tong Ma'am Teresa ba? Nga, sige na magpasuwat ko eh.
Hala, uy.
Kaning bago maestra
Nakakuan
maayo
ka
ka
na.
mo tudlo. Unsa to naman to term?
Pero di
Natural
ko na sa kitas
approach.
Ma'am Teresa Marie. Kaya mga itong
Ha?
silag pasawan.
Natural? Natural approach
Approach
yun na.
natural approach yung
Anak
ingon
siya.
na.
Pero,
Ha?
nakulbaan ko Mari, uy. Makakatuon ba ka itong mga anak-anak? Nga sige ra magduwa.
Ikaw pa di ay.
Lagi Mari.
Pero
Sige,
kasi inana
magduwa
lang
ko
siya
eh.
Marie. Uy, inana yung pagtudlo.
Kabantay, chud.
Mm.
Pero Mari,
No?
atong gamiton pagkamaritis with
Bitaw,
purpose
bitaw.
ba? Ato sa ni-search unsa nang kuan natural approach ba sa pagtudlo.
May pa
Bakit
Marie.
ignorante
Sakto
ko
dyan.
eh.
I-search siya
Sige,
dapat.
tawag ko ni mong balik ka na.
True.
Sige,
Di
sige.
na problem.
Sige, makita ta. Ato sa eskwelahan, yung istoryahan ti ka ana ha. Ang utang nimo.
Lagi.
Sa naka si Mana. Ay,
Ay,
galing di ana.
Kita ka niya siya naninda patag masyaw diri kay wate kwarta.
Sunod adlaw na lang day.
What is natural approach? The natural approach is one of the approaches that are used for teaching or learning foreign languages. Developed by Dr. Stephen Krashin of USC and Dr. Tracy Terrell of the University of California, San Diego. As the word natural itself suggests, this approach focuses on the acquisition of basic language skills in a naturalistic manner in a class setting. Major emphasis is laid on communication. In the classroom setup, the teachers are not expected to strictly pay attention to grammar or constantly correct the errors that the students might make. This method pays attention to the use of certain activities that make the process of language learning easier to engage with and to achieve with. Such activities include content activities, activities based on personalizing language, games, and problem-solving activities. Emphasis is put on the content, personal experiences, and other fun activities such as games. Truly, natural approach is built in a way that the learners do not experience anxiety. The four basic principles of natural approach: reproduction, early production, speech emergence, and intermediate fluency. In free production, it is essentially a silent pace where nothing seems to be happening. Children have this stage when they are not really talking at all. It seems nothing is going on. However, the ideologies of listening, picking up on meanings, reading context clues, interpreting and making guesses, and making mistakes are already practiced and visible within themselves. In early production, it is when babies start uttering their first words, phrases, or even simple sentences. The focus is still in comprehension. Bothering with correct grammar comes late in the acquisition stage. In the natural approach, the early stages are replete with grammatically incorrect communication that aren't really implicitly corrected. In speech emergence, it is when a child's singular words and short phrases will transform into lengthier ones. The sentences may diverted into longer, yet still relatively basic, and are likely to contain a lot of mistakes in terms of grammar, pronunciation of word usage, and many more. However, the progress is undeniable as more content is added to the speech. In intermediate fluency, progress to fluency continues as more exposure to language happens. The child is just getting to peek behind the scenes to see the specific rules. Example, grammatical rules that will serve as a guide in his or her own language usage. All that is explained to him or her is the rationale, the nuances of communication behind the groupings of words that he or she has been using naturally all along. The goals of natural approach. To foster naturalistic language acquisition, to mimic natural language learning with a focus in communication and instruction through exposure, to decrease the importance of conscious grammar study and explicit correction of students' errors, to reduce students' anxiety and encourage them to engage with a second language spontaneously, and to develop communicative skills throughout the learning processes in the classroom setting. All the goals of natural approach only justify the notion that children learn best if they are comfortable with the approaches being utilized along the learning processes. Learning does not really need to be complicated and technically correct in all aspects. It will naturally emerge at the right time and at the right pace. The three characteristics of natural approach: the input, comprehension, and communication. Input refers to what is being relayed to the language learner, or the packages of language that are delivered to and received by the listener. The natural approach puts high emphasis not just the amount, but also the nature of the input to receive. Input is also known as exposure. For proper, meaningful language acquisition to occur, the input should also be meaningful and comprehensible. For comprehension, in the natural approach, the initial focus really is on comprehension. The core of the issue is the question: do you understand what is being said? You don't need to notice subject-verb agreement for these. Understanding the meaning of something can be done in different ways, besides technical grammar breakdowns. Comprehension must precede production for true internal learning to be done. And for communication, when it comes to language acquisition, the natural approach places more significance in communication than grammar. In order for a child or learner to eventually produce their own sentences, it is more crucial that he or she is constantly exposed to meaningful communication than grammar lessons. The advantages and disadvantages of natural approach. The advantages. It relieves the burden of learning syntax. It is simple to adapt with. It is pupil-oriented. It requires no training. And for the disadvantages, it requires clarification dialogue. It requires more keystrokes. It may not show context. And also, it is unpredictable. Upon delving into the world of natural approach, it is really important to weigh the possibilities of both contributing and negating factors to emerge with. It is important to understand that just like the other approaches, natural approach is also linked with advantages and disadvantages. However, one thing is certain, everything will only depend to the adaptability of one person in the heights of certain challenges, certain ordeals along the process. The sample activities for natural approach. We have problem-solving activities, learning games, affective humanistic task, answer and question exercise, conversation practice, reading aloud, and dictation. And now, let's watch a short sample demonstration applying the whole ideology of natural approach inside the classroom setup in the context of English language teaching.
Morning, students. Okay, we are going to practice little activities with the ball. Yes, we're going to learn so many actions to use while playing. For example, this is the ball, and now I'm going to shake the ball. Everybody, please shake. Yes. Move from one side to another. That means shake. Yes. Now I am going to throw the ball. Everybody, please throw. Okay. I'm going to throw the ball, and Angel is going to catch it. Okay, Angel. Ready? Catch it. Excellent. Now please throw the ball to Ulises. Ulises, please catch it. Excellent. Ulises, now throw the ball to Dulce. Back to you, please. Throw the ball. And I'm going to catch it. Excellent. Now I am going to pass the ball. Pass the ball. Yes. I am going to pass the ball to you. Thank you. Please pass the ball to him. Pass the ball to her. Pass the ball to him. Throw the ball to me. Catch the ball, please. Pass it to him. Throw it back to me. Thank you. Now, let's roll the ball. I am going to roll the ball to you. Roll the ball to her, please. Roll the ball to him. Roll the ball to me. Roll the ball to her, to him. Pass it. I'm going to pass it. Throw it to him. Throw it to him. Throw it to me. Excellent, marvelous. Now, let's practice bouncing. To bounce the ball. Yes? Bounce. Okay? I am going to bounce the ball to you, please. Bounce the ball to Ulises. Bounce the ball to Angel. Bounce the ball to him. Bounce the ball to Abraham. Bounce the ball to Dulce.
In the video, we can clearly see that the teacher was applying the ideology of natural approach in the context of teaching. For the students to learn naturally, the teacher incorporated the lesson into something fun and interactive intervention, which was the use of the ball. In that scenario, the teacher focused more on interaction and communication rather than pressuring and correcting students' errors in a specific subject area. Here is a sample lesson plan incorporating natural approach for English language teaching. For the key concept or understanding needed to be developed, we have the world of verbal communication. So these will be the main topic of the discussion. The duration, 1 hour. The learning objectives are as follows. Describe the concepts behind verbal communication. Demonstrate verbal communication. Distinguish the importance of verbal communication. And exhibit sense of willingness and enthusiasm upon delving into the world of verbal communication. So for the content, we have verbal communication. For the learning resources, we will be needing visual aid, PowerPoint presentation, and photos. For the procedures, in our introductory activity, which is good for 2 minutes, we will be having a pick-to-word. So the teacher will provide 5 photos pertaining to the world of verbal communication. Each photo has a designated hidden meaning or concept that the students need to unlock and discover. The teacher will only recognize 1 volunteer per photo and will only be given 15 seconds each to share his or her idea in the class. 1 photo at a time only. For the activity proper, good for 8 minutes, the class will be having group communication. The teacher will group the students into 2. So each group has a designated role to play. So the first group will serve as the speaker and the second group will serve as the receiver in the context of communication. The teacher will give a specific scenario where individual scripts will be given to each group. The script will serve as the basis of communication for the groups to comply and follow in accordance with the provided scenario. For the analysis, good for 10 minutes, the class will be having chain of words. In the same grouping, the teacher will give 1 word to each group. The groups will be given 30 seconds to analyze the word being provided. The group should select a leader that will first incorporate the provided word into a phrase or sentence in communication. The last word in the phrase or sentence of the first player should be incorporated by another player into another phrase or sentence. The same process until the end. Once the students are done connecting and incorporating each word to a phrase or sentence, the first player will automatically go in front of the class and share the main thought or idea about all the connected phrases and sentences that they have created upon verbally interacting with each other in a short period of time. For the abstraction, which is good for 15 minutes, this will be the discussion proper. So the teacher will provide an important information pertaining to the main subject area, which is the world of verbal communication, for the students to better understand and comprehend the topic. And along the way, the students will be able to answer 2 different questions. The first one, what is the role of effective verbal communication in the quest of society's progress and growth in the 21st setting of the world? And lastly, what are the different classifications of verbal communication that are prominent in the modern day setting? For the application, good for 10 minutes, communication buddy will be played. So the teacher will give 1 minute for the students to find their partner that will be their communication buddy. So once the allotted time is up, the students will start to communicate and interact with their selected buddies, sharing and talking about life experiences, stories of hope and agony, or any matters outside the box will do. The students must observe how their bodies communicate or interact, may it be in the context of bodily gestures, usage of words, and ways of communication. The goals of the activity are for the students to naturally demonstrate the ideology of verbal communication within themselves, associated with its functioning system, and at the same time evaluate the communications mechanisms of their selected bodies. For the assessment, good for 7 minutes, the activity will be self-assessment. So in a 1/2 sheet of paper, the students will write what they have observed to the communications mechanisms of their bodies upon interacting and communicating with each other. After enumerating their observations, based on the application, in the application part of the discussion, they should identify if the things being observed and listed are considered as contributing factor or negating factor for the verbal communication to be effectively realized. The teacher will collect all the answer sheets once the allotted time for answering is up. For the assignment, which is good for 6 minutes, the activity will be Shade Me. The teacher will give an assignment for the students to evaluate and assess their learning and understanding pertaining to the world of verbal communication. In these assignments, the students will only shade the item if the provided statements or phrases correspond to their individual mechanisms in the context of communication. In the same process, the teacher will collect the students' assignments the day after the discussion proper. For the concluding activity, which is good for 2 minutes, the activity will be Commu-Learn. So the teacher will let the students read the quote of Carlo Balvas as an indicator of their meaningful journey towards the world of verbal communication. The quote is, "Verbal communication is the gateway in unlocking good interpersonal relationships, learning another language, and redefining one's sense of purpose." After completing all the procedures, the teacher may proceed in crafting the remarks and the reflection about the happenings of 1 hour discussion pertaining to the world of verbal communication. I believe that wraps my discussion for the world, for the whole ideology of natural approach in the context of English language teaching. So, this has been Carlo Balvas. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye. Amping kanunay. Goodbye everyone. Ampo og amping kita kanunay. Bye-bye.